What's going on, guys? Chuck here. Not really with a purchase, because this is something I bought like a year ago or so. But it's something I just want to have a little conversation about. And it's talking about an '80s film that I think has not really talked about too much. I know it's got a bit of a cult following, but you don't really hear too much about it, and that is Terror in the Aisles from Universal Pictures. Um, I think this came out about 1984, and this is a great, I don't want to call it compilation film, or yeah, compilation film discussing what they call terror and suspense films, which really runs the gamut of emotions, or the gamut of emotions, the gamut of films you can put under the category of terror and suspense. Um, and it's done in a unique way, as it's documentary, basically, more or less, hosted by Donald Pleasance and Nancy Allen, and they're doing it as people in a theater. So they walk into a theater and they're talking, with other, you know, uh, patrons watching movies, and they're basically discussing why we enjoy being scared and the different aspects of the terror or suspense film. As a kid, I mean, this probably saw this, I'm sure, on HBO, as I did most of my viewing. And this is, I've said before, for a lot of kids in the '80s, and about '84, I was about 9 years old. So when I saw this, I was probably 10, because by the time I made it to HBO, this is a crash course in terror, suspense, horror films. A lot of the movies on here, I mean, they're well known. And there were some on here, clips I saw, that's like, ooh, I really got to see that. What is that? It makes you, this grabs your attention. I mean, they talk about your class, obviously, with Donald Pleasance, you've got movies, talk about Halloween, Halloween 2. Friday the 13th, Part 2 is shown a lot on here. Jaws, um, The Thing. So many, there's so many on here, I can't even name them all. But there's a few on here which you wouldn't think about as far as horror wise, like Vice Squad, um, with Wings Hauser, which is basically like a really, I don't know, a sleazy exploitation, killer pimp uh, cop film, which is fun. As fun as a sleazy killer pimp cop film can be. Miss 45 is mentioned in here. Another one, Nighthawks, with Billy D. Williams, Sylvester Stallone, and Rutger Hauer, which is basically like a suspense action film. Dressed to Kill is mentioned here. When a Stranger Calls. Uh, Alone in the Dark is in here, which before I knew what Alone in the Dark was, and that was just recently released by Scream Factory. And which brings my next point: is there a lot of these films? I just seen these clips. I didn't know what they were for the longest time, and I was like, "What is that?" And I'd find out later on. I was like, "Wow, I really want to see that." And a lot of the films that I just mentioned, Scream Factory actually recently released. I mean, like I said, Alone in the Dark. That was out of print for the longest time, and I'd only seen clips from on this film here. And just a couple months ago, Scream Factory released Alone in the Dark. A couple years back, they released Vice Squad, which I finally got to see because I bought it from them. Nighthawks, one I did see on cable as a kid, briefly, barely remembering it, but mostly remembering it from watching this. And they just recently released it, or actually not recently, like a year or two ago, and I purchased it from their Shout Select collection. um, so yeah, but this is just a great, fun little. I usually like to watch it once a year around Halloween, and it's a good film. If you get a little party going with friends, just sit around and just kind of watch these little jump scares, and just because there's so many. The editing on this is, for all the movies they put in here. I mean, it can be very easily just kind of throw stuff at you and not really get it, but it's edited so well and being very cohesive, and they do a great way of amping up the excitement, if you will, while also explaining and giving you somewhat of an education. And there's a great commentary actually listed on here. Who is it? Pop culture historian Russell Dyball, who talks about this and basically, how the films are put together, the movies are put together. I guess it was supposed to be the beginning of a series. It never came to fruition. Starting with Terror in the Aisles, I think the next movie they had talked about maybe was like Dancing in the Aisles, which would have focused on musicals, and maybe Laughing in the Aisles, which would have been about comedies. But I guess it never really panned out. And you can imagine the licensing nightmare a film like this must be. So it's really it's a wonder this got made. But it's just kind of this Blu-ray, which released from Screen Factory a year ago, which I was so excited that this was finally getting a great, well-deserved release. And I know this was as soon as it was announced, this was a pre-order, first day pre-order. Actually, this was announced the same day as the Friday the 13th box set, and I pre-ordered both of them at the same time. But I was very excited for this. There's something about that commentary as it's time that's on here is there's a guest call, I guess, from I think the head of Scream or Shout Factory, and he talks about how a lot of the films they chose to put on release from Shout Factory were they would kind of look at the poster, because if you look at that skull, their names of all the titles of all these films, and he said he would go through and look, try and decide what's good for their Scream Factory label or whatever. He would check out the titles on here and say, well, if it's here, it's probably worthy. And that's, again, explains to you why stuff like Vice Squad or Nighthawks ends up being a Shout Factory / Scream Factory release, which I thought was really fascinating. Another thing about this poster, I actually had this poster upstairs hanging in my loft area. So, really good poster. This Blu-ray, let's see. You've got interviews with Nancy Allen and the composer John Beale, editor Gregory McClatchy, which is interesting because this was done, obviously, a lot of the special features on this were filmed during the pandemic and then when it was isolation. So a lot of these are like streaming or Zoom call interviews as opposed to usual one-on-one. I think Nancy Allen's might be, but the other ones are definitely Zoom calls. So that's that makes for a good time capsule. If you're looking at this sometime back, you remember this was done during the pandemic year of 2020. So there's that. This also includes, which is something I was not aware of, an alternate television cut of the film. I guess when it released on TV with some different openings, different scenes, different clips, which I found very fascinating. And I watched this, and it's nice because it's not really cleaned up, so it still has a kind of grain. You can tell it was a TV presentation, but it's really cool to see. But yeah, I was very, very happy to get this on Blu-ray. I've had it for the longest time, and I still have, on VHS. This was the only way you could get this old VHS, which I mean, no, it's rewound. But yeah, and I think I picked this up, I want to say the flea market. There was a time when I would go to our local flea market, and when they were full of video shops, like, you had like 3 or 4 in there, and you go in there and buy a bunch of movies, like $2-3 on VHS. That's how I started my collection. We're going there and picking up any VHS tape I could buy, and I got this one. I was very excited, but I never got a DVD release. At least not an official one. I believe Universal had their like on-demand service. You could get it through them. I don't know if it was Blu-ray or DVD. I'm pretty sure it was DVD. They're on-demand. You could get it that way, but that was really it. But they did release it on Blu-ray secretly, and that was the Halloween 2 anniversary edition Blu-ray. Um, when it was, there wasn't a whole lot of special features on that, thing special about that Halloween 2 Blu-ray, except, and this was a selling point for me, it listed very quietly, very, subtly, that there, the special feature was Terror in the Aisles. That's it. Just so if you bought the Blu-ray of Halloween 2 from Universal, on the special features, it has Terror in the Aisle, and it's in HD. So that was the only Blu-ray copy of Terror in the Aisles you had, which, so that's the only selling point I had for that Halloween 2 Blu-ray. Excuse me. And I bought that. Never once watched Halloween 2 on Blu-ray. I got it specifically to see Terror in the Aisles. Fast forward to last year, and the announcement that Screen Factory was going to release this on a Blu-ray. Much overdue, good quality standalone release of Terror in the Aisles. And I was so stoked. And I am so, so happy that this movie got the love it deserves. Because this is a fantastic film. It may not be everyone's cup of tea. Some people look like, why am I just watching clips of films? But again, as a young kid, this was a crash course into, and I heard this say, a lot of people say this too, a crash course into, horror, suspense, what have you. And it's done very well. And, Donald Pleasance, Nancy Allen, a lot of fun. The clips on here are really good. There's going to be stuff in here you may never have seen, and you're going to look at it and say, gee, what is that? I really want to find that out. And that's what happened with me. And I would watch this movie over and over and over. I also, before buying the VHS, at home we had videotapes. And my mom would buy blank tapes and she'd record everything off of cable. She had a little booklet listed, each cataloged every single videotape, what was on each tape, so you could flip to the book. Oh, I want to find tape 25 and watch whatever. Well, Terror in the Aisles is one of these films that she recorded from HBO or Showtime or whatever it was at. So I wore that tape out because I watched it all the time, and I still will watch this movie. Especially around Halloween. It's kind of like my kickoff for Halloween season. I will watch Terror in the Aisles just to get me started. It's just a lot of fun, and if you've never seen it, I highly recommend you check it out, especially if you're a horror fan and you've never seen this. Which means if you've never seen it, if you're a horror fan and you've never seen this, it means you're a relatively young horror fan. Because if you were, an old man like myself, you saw this, I'm sure, and more likely you probably really enjoyed it too. But I highly recommend you check it out. It's still available for purchase, and it's well worth it. It's a very fun movie, and I highly recommend it. So, again, Terror in the Aisles from Screen Factory. So, that is it for my ramblings on Terror in the Aisles. Thank you for taking the time to check this out. If you enjoy it, click like, share, subscribe, leave me a comment that you enjoyed Terror in the Aisles. Would you have liked to see him laughing in the aisles or dancing in the aisles? Was there anything on Terror in the Aisles that you looked at and say, hey, I really want to see that film, it made you go out and get it? Whatever. I'd love to hear from you. But that is it for now. So until next time, this is Chuck saying, take it easy.